Recording has started.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on Content Hub for developers. Let's get started. Thanks, Rohan, for introduction. Just a sec. It's fine. But just a little bit about me. As my name is Gopi Krishna, and I've been working as a developer from past 11 years and close to 6 years on Sitecore, and currently working as a developer in AKQA, New Zealand. And you can find my even YouTube also, it's the same Gopi Gujula. I've been uploading a couple of content hub related videos, so you can subscribe and get notifications there. You can reach me on any of the forums. Let's quickly look at the agenda today. So not going to too much deep into the Sitecore why and Sitecore Content Hub, why it is and all, but let's look at like what is Content Hub and its main key components. What are the different teams' roles and responsibilities, and then we'll look at different configurations and a couple of integrations, integration hooks, both internal and external, as well as very important piece is migration, and quick demo on overview of Content Hub as well as Web Client SDK, and also where to go from here for learning. What is Content Hub? So you might be seeing, you might be hearing a lot about content crisis. So wherever you find a Content Hub documentation, first it starts with a content crisis. That's a problem it is trying to solve. What do we mean by content crisis? It's like companies, different teams are handling different content and managing them in a silos. So whereas Content Hub is kind of a unified platform, like home base for all the company's disparate content. So that's a main role. Second piece is like mainly it is a marketer's tool, where it is a platform like to perform to perform every part of marketer's job. So all in one solution, and mainly tool for marketers. So a SaaS-based product, first in the Sitecore product ecosystem, true SaaS-based product, although it was acquired from Style Labs. So it was acquired by Sitecore in 2018. So remember this piece, it is a SaaS-based product. So we need a sandboxes, we need licenses to practice. And what are all the main components? So main components are 5, which are like DAM, which is digital asset management. Whenever we talk about Content Hub, the first thing comes into mind is like, okay, it is a DAM. Obviously it is a DAM, digital asset management, but it is much more than that, as we see that a lot of other components also involved. So DAM is a central piece, is asset, and it allows for managing, curation, and distribution of assets. And MRM, next is marketing resource management. So which helps mainly marketers and marketing teams to manage projects, budgets, and resources. It's kind of a, you can say, a Jira tool as well, like that kind of a tool where marketing team they can manage their projects. And PCM is product content management. Product content management is like a single source of truth for all our product content, a kind of a PIM system. And WTP, I haven't explored much in this. It's a web to print. We kind of create materials and layouts and all on demand, but haven't explored these pieces much. And the last is very important in this ecosystem, which is CMP, content marketing platform. It's mainly a centralized system. For the marketing people to plan, collaborate, and distribute different content types. Asset is a central piece for the DAM, whereas content types are a central piece for the CMP. So that's a pretty mouthful. But in this session, we are mainly focusing on Sitecore DAM. Although there is integrations are lower level, it is a common across all the platforms, but all the components, but today mainly focusing on DAM. Yeah, from here the fun part starts. That's a definition. That's you would be keep seeing it. So now, yeah, we are working on container project. So what is a version, or sorry, what kind of edition we are working on? As we know, Sitecore, when we are working, we would ask first question is it XM, XP? Because we would know features are different, XP, XM, XP, XC, because the features varies. Similarly here, when you are working with container, we need to know which edition we are working on. So either professional, corporate, or enterprise. Excuse me. Corporate is recently introduced, I mean last year only. Before that, it was only professional and enterprise. So main key difference is professional, these schema. I mean, imagine you have a templates, right, in Sitecore. So those templates are fixed. You will not be able to create new templates. So that's a main thing about professional edition. Here also we cannot create extend those entity models. But whereas corporate and enterprise, we can add custom entities, we can do all the extensions. And license is based on the number of users, and file storage, 1 terabyte, all other things. And here observe main thing, license, it's based on the calls, 15 API calls per second. These API calls, whenever you're talking about API calls, remember these are not API calls which we are hitting the Content Hub server from external systems. Not only that, it also includes internally whatever we are, through using Content Hub portal, whatever users are actively performing some actions, that also will count as the API calls. So 15 API calls, because we keep getting, if we are at all implementing some integration or migration, we get into that issues, the API calls limit threshold. And file storage, main thing to remember at the file storage is, it's not only production system, it's including all the non-prod environments as well. So enterprise, we have dev, QA, and production. So all together 40 TB. And we have a chance to increase this. They charge, I guess, based on extra how many extra TBs we need. So based on that, they charge. So, but this is extensible. I mean, this can be memory can be added, file storage, and application support. Obviously, enterprise is premium support, and managed services is premium. So we need to know first which edition we are working on. Based on that only, we would know what can be done and what cannot be done. So for developer, it is very important to know. And entity, properties, and relations, these are main, what you can say, main pieces in the Content Hub. What is entity here is, it's a data representation of objects inside the system. So whatever we represent in Content Hub, it is by entity. And each entity will have, so if you see entity object, each entity will have entity definition. It's a kind of, you can say, object and class in object-oriented world. So entity definition is that class, object is that instance of it. And each object will have an ID. So integer ID, which it auto generates. And it can also have properties. I mean, all the what custom properties or system properties, and again relation with the other entities. So those relations can be one to many or many to one to many. So all these things. Let's focus. Let's move on to next one. You would better understand it. I'm just trying to bring some parallels between the Sitecore. So what we usually do. So here entity definition in Content Hub, you can understand, like you can compare to template in Sitecore. And entity is a content item. Obviously, we create a content item based on the template. And next is taxonomy option list. These are kind of a list fields. Properties are, simple fields. Taxonomy or option list are kind of a list fields where you can have multi-select or single select fields. And schema is where we manage all these entity definitions. So that's kind of a template manager for us in Sitecore world. And next is components. We can build the pages in Sitecore Content Hub using pre-built components. It's similar to like SXA components in Sitecore world. So you have already pre-built components in SXA. You just drag and drop and configure a few things. Similarly, components can be added in Content Hub, like not drag and drop, but just adding a component and configure a few settings, then component would be up and running. And export and import, again, we can export and import all these definitions, different schema, and different scripts, all these things, similar like how we have a packages in Sitecore. Only catch here is using export and import, we cannot export exactly the assets, only the definitions and all these things, whereas packages, we can export the assets, content items as well. And entity manager, this is kind of a technical tool, you can say, or technical view of each entity. Each entity will have their own pages, search pages. We can search on the entities and we can view the entity details and all for a UI, for the user perspective. But if we are a developer or admin, we want to troubleshoot few things, then we can go to, there is a tool, there is a interface called Entity Manager, which is similar like a DB browser in Sitecore. So where you can go and see the raw values, what is saved and what. So very useful in the troubleshooting. Next one is triggers and action scripts. How we add like item events and process. I mean, we have item saved, item updated, item deleted, kind of events, and which we can trigger some processes. I mean, pipelines and process. We custom, we patch our process, right? So which need to be run based on the particular event. Similarly, we have a triggers and action scripts. So triggers can be, I mean, based on the some event trigger, it can be triggered some action, and that action can execute some scripts. Scripts are nothing but a C# code here. So that's a pretty higher level, some terminology, which we can maybe parallel with Sitecore world and better understand it. Not exactly some of these things are really down to down the same comparison, but just to better understand these things. And let's quickly look at what it makes like implementation. Okay, we got a content of project and we are implementing. So what are the phases it will be? First phase is our sprint 1 is gone because it's a SaaS-based product. We know we will spend usually large amount of time on setting up our environments for Sitecore, and as well as higher level environments, even the local environment, dev environments, everything. So that is not there now. It's all SaaS based. So we do reach out to Sitecore and they set up all these environments based on our editions. If it is a corporate, you would have one dev, one QA, and one production. So all these environments would be set up and we would map our custom domains. That is not there now. I mean, that's a before the implementation. So in the implementation phase, main very
Gopi, I guess we have lost you. Yeah, we can continue now.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, implementation phase, we would have different things. Mainly, yeah, Sprint 0 is taken by Sitecore itself. So we just give a requirement based on the editions, based on which edition we are on, corporate or professional or sorry. Based on whichever edition, they configure the environments. Sorry, Amit is requesting. Sorry, okay. I'm not sure what is getting, but yeah. Sorry. Let me start from the implementation itself. So implementation, it is little different to, or it's a large different to, I mean, hugely different to the Sitecore implementations, because one thing is print 0 is taken away. I mean, we only, come on, go away. We mainly, Sitecore will set up all the environments. So that's a simple. We don't need to set up anything. We don't need to set up any local systems or anything. We just give a custom domains, whatever the domain URL we need, then they will set up everything. And very, very important point here is defining the entity model. So for this, we would sit with a lot of meetings would be there. We would sit with the strategy team and client stakeholders and come up with what are their use cases and what are the systems, existing systems, and how they are using, and come up with a entity representation, because using which we create the entities in entity definitions in Content Hub. So it's a kind of a you can compare with the DB designs. So in the database, we would design like which table, which properties, which fields. So something like that. So we define all these entity. It is very costly once we define the entity and to change it, because we would configure a lot of things based on this entity only. That's why this should be, even though it takes more time, this should come up. I mean, as much as possible, this should come up perfectly fine. So we need to take time and define these entity models. Then creating is much simpler. I mean, once you define what all the entities, what the relations, properties, everything, just creating them in Content Hub is much easier. And the page configurations, again, for which entities, what we need search pages, what details pages, what components we want on top of them. So using pre-built components, and what are the operations they can perform, like can they export, can they delete, can they mass edit, can they edit? So all kind of operations. And external page components, if any of the pre-built components do not suffice our requirements, we do build external page components. So this kind of like manipulating some information, or sorry, processing some information, aggregating something, and if you want to show some information, we can show it using external page component. It can be purely internal content, as well as it can be sometimes hitting a API and getting that information from external system as well. So from external system, showing the content inside the Content Hub. And internal and external integration, this can be done in number of ways. External integrations, as Content Hub sits in the middle, it can have a number of systems talking to it, maybe feeding the data into the Content Hub or feeding to the other system from Content Hub. So, and internal integration is executing some kind of a processes inside the Content Hub itself. We'll see in a moment. Security involves like few things like authentication, mainly which SSO we are trying to associate with it, with the system, and what are the rights, what are the user policies, like how we have users and roles in the Sitecore. We have users and user policies, and we can have a granular level of access rights as well, fine tune them, and digital rights asset management. Everything is covered in the security. I mean, all these topics individually, if we take, we can cover like, it will take a lot of time to cover individual topics. So creating an entity, it will take like a couple of hours. Same like security, it takes a couple of hours. Theming is again just a look and feel of whole Content Hub UI. So we can change using this themes. And migration, I believe this is very important part of whole Content Hub, because I mean, the whole Content Hub implementation, because the number of assets you are going to migrate, it plays a very vital role how you are importing them. We would look at various ways to migrate the content, because in each client will have different systems in place, already existing systems. So we need to talk to all those systems and put all those, bring all those assets into the Content Hub. It's a humongous task based on how many thousands of assets you have. And so we saw the implementation, right? Like now let's see what are the roles and responsibilities, who plays what. You might have seen already Content Hub course, if anyone has gone through Sitecore learning portal Content Hub courses. they would split like content hub users, admin, and developer. So all 3 levels of courses. So I'm not focusing on user now. I'm talking about admins and admins and developers only. So admins can create entity and page configurations. They can create entity models. They can configure pages. They can make content management, what are the assets and everything. And themes, yeah, they can, I mean, using with the help of front end, if they can give some styles and some images, they can upload and they can arrange the themes. And security, they can configure SSO and rights as well. So that's a role of admin. Let's see what is the role of developer. So developers will build triggers and scripts like custom processes and external page components. If pre-built components are not suffice any requirements, we can extend that using external page components and integrations. Yeah, any third-party external integrations or even internal integrations and migrations. Migration is so on a higher level. If you see the developer thing, anywhere overall anywhere code is involved, the developer comes in. Anywhere general all these tasks would be handled by admin. But in the real world, let me tell you, it depends on anyway project to project. But what I have seen is these lines blur a lot. So even though we are developers, we need to play a lot both the roles, both admin and developer. So we do all these activities, entities, page configuration, theme, security, everything. And even if we are not going to do it, even if we have a dedicated admin, it is very, very important for us as a developer to know all these activities, because when we are not going to start straight away coding, we need to understand the system better and what can be done without any code and what cannot be done without code. Then only we can come and suggest that, okay, this requires a coding, this requires some external integrations. So that's the reason we need to know admin, and even though we are developers, we need to know admin activities as well. But some projects you would play both the roles. So let's briefly see what all the activities we do. Yeah, entity models. Little background, I did work on an implementation last year for the Content Hub DAM. And with Sitecore, now like a lot of partners are not implemented Content Hub not worked on Content Hub implementation. Sitecore value services team comes into the picture. So client buys a license and engages the partner, and value services team comes in, and value services team will take the lead of the implementation, and we would be helping them. As per my understanding, first 2 projects they are going to do that in this way, so that partners will better understand what it takes to implement, because Sitecore is implementing these projects from quite a while. I mean the Style Labs, so they have a better knowledge on what can be done, what cannot be done from the system. So why did I give the background? So whatever happens when we come up with the entity, in whichever the tool we create those diagrams, entities, relations and all, Sitecore value services team gives us this template Excel sheet, and they will ask, okay, fill in this template and give us. We would create the entities in the Content Hub. So it's quite a task to create all these things. So you would have each entity one sheet, and you create, you panel grouping, and you create a properties, inheritance, conditions, value types, relations, and again search and all. Everything we give. This Excel sheet, if you provide to value services, they would go and create all these things using, going to the sheets. We would review them time to time, the sheets. So this is what, and once we define all the entities in the system, it would pretty much looks like this. So if you click on MS set, it would have different relations between different entities. So this entity manager, and inside Content Hub, always all the entities, pre-built, predefined entities will start with M dot. That's a marketing Content Hub, the term. So the prefix, they keep using it. If at all we are going to define our own custom entities for our business use cases, we would always go with our client prefixes, maybe the name prefixes. So maybe just if I'm working for AKQA, maybe we will put, I just put a sample of like AK dot. So that it is easy for us to identify what entities are custom defined, what entities are pre-built from the system. So let's move on. That's the entity model. We spend a lot of time there only. And next is page configuration. Once we are done with entity models, we come to page configuration. If you see here, just very easy to create the pages. Just we need to know the nuances of what component, how the relations and everything. So here you see a couple of components. We just dragged a title component, which displays title. We just had a search component, which show the results. Out of the search, we have a selection component and creation component if you want to create an entity. So these are like pretty common components we create. We use and we just configure it. So you would feel like you're doing a little bit of SXA only. And integrations can be both internal and external. So why we are telling about integration internal? So integration means supposed to be an external, right? But internally we can do some processes and execute a few scripts. So triggers, actions, and scripts. These three go together, kind of a based on some event, it will trigger an action, and action will execute some script. Script is C# here, C# some code, or script can be something else as well. So external page components are like, as I said before, based on maybe if you want to do some process and show the information to the end user, which is pre-built components do not suffice, then we use the external page components. Even though name is a little bit tricky, it can be internal as well. It is not going to external. It is processing internally only, and it is showing the results. But it can hit external APIs and fetch the information as well. And external endpoints, we have a REST API, like all the systems, we have like very rich REST API. You can use choice of your framework and choice of your language and hit the REST API and do all the activities, the integrations. Or you can Webclient SDK, which is predominantly C# SDK. So as we are like site code developers are predominantly .NET developers, we can prefer this because REST API, quite a bit of work we need to do if you are working with REST API, but Webclient SDK, all these things are wrapped, abstracted. So we are only playing with C# classes. So those interfaces abstracted from us. So we are only working with this, much easier to implement. Very quick. We did implement a couple of integrations. It's much easier to implement using Webclient SDK. And JavaScript SDK, it's only introduced in recently. So I haven't explored further on the JavaScript SDK. Some more internal information about triggers. So main thing is based on some events. This here mainly three components: events, conditions, and actions. Event means these events can be how item saved and item created, this kind item modified kind of events are there inside code. Here also we have like everything is an entity here, entity created, entity modified, some other activity, some other event can be triggered, can trigger some actions. And what are these conditions? So even though entity is created, we want to match certain conditions. Maybe this entity is of this asset, maybe this value got modified, then only trigger this action. So something like that conditions we can have. There are a lot of ways we can add the conditions. And actions is here, like actions can be we can map to actions. Actions can be like different things, like action scripts. It can be scripts, it can be API calls, it can be hitting Azure Event Hub, a couple of options we have. So, and main thing here is it can be synchronous or it can be asynchronous. So if you are processing something, we can have like let it process in the background, or we want like to show that immediately, then we have a synchronous. But we should be very careful. We should not have that UI when we are doing something with the UI. We should not have that synchronous, because it will freeze the UI if it is taking long time, and so it will have cascading effects. So mostly we will prefer asynchronous. Just based on the use case, we go for synchronous. And actions, like same thing. Triggers, based on the event, it triggers some actions. So these actions can be triggered from user, like button click events. how we create in Sitecore like commands for the buttons. So similarly here we can create some external buttons and some extra buttons and trigger some action. So if user clicks on that, automatically that whole piece will execute, or based on some event and event modifications and based on some conditions, it triggers actions. So this action here can be a action script which executes inside Content Hub as well, Content Hub only, or it can be an external API call, or it can be Azure Event Hub. So it can be n number of things. We have a couple of options there. And again, as I said, like before, it can be in process or it can be in background. A little bit about scripting framework. Yeah, again, scripts are nothing but here C# code files, but main thing, they run on Content Hub server itself. We're not integrating from anything externally. We're not doing anything. So it runs on the Content Hub server itself, but we need to be careful. We should not run like heavy process on the Content Hub because it will consume those processing capacity, and it might slow down our other user activities. So that's why very simple functionalities, we can just do it there. I will show you real scenarios in a moment. So in which cases we use these action scripts. But these action scripts can be of different ways. User sign in, when the user sign ins, do you want to trigger something when user pre-registers? So this is first time user is coming to the platform, to the system. So he's registering. Before that you run something post registration and some metadata processing. Metadata means if you upload some image or some video, it does some processing, the metadata and all. So in that time you want to execute something and action scripts. So these action scripts are like C# code files. So external integrations, REST APIs. So again, I talked about this before, like REST APIs already available with Sitecore Content Hub, and they have very rich API. So you can traverse and you can do all kind of operations, all the basic CRUD operations we can do. And API you can go and see as well. You would typical domain URL and /API. You would have all the activity, all the entities, all the things there, entity definitions, everything. Web Client SDK, which is our favorite, C# library. Yeah, to make it would be much faster and easier to develop using Web Client SDK, and easily portable to scripts as scripting framework internal to Sitecore Content Hub. They have the C# scripts. So those scripts can be easily portable to Web Client SDK outside scripts as well. And JavaScript, it just recently introduced in 3.4. Just a little comparison, this picked from the Content Hub course. REST API, you see HTTP integration, but whereas we are using here C#. Parameter-based querying, we can use LinkU. LinkU, we are all familiar with LinkU. And as well, you would get a JSON responses, but here you would get those responses mapped into the classes directly and runs externally. This is a very important here. So this integration or whatever we are doing, REST API, this runs completely outside of Content Hub servers. Same goes with Web Client SDK, but scripting framework, it runs on M, which is a marketing Content Hub, which is inside the Content Hub server as well. And both Web Client SDK and scripting framework share the same APIs. So we can easily port scripting framework C# scripts to Web Client SDK, Web Client SDK to scripting framework. And yeah, let me quickly run through asset migration. So we have built all the system now. We did create entity model. We did all the page configurations. We did all the integrations, maybe external or internal, and all the security, everything we defined. So now last piece will come into this is asset migration. So how do we migrate the assets? So there are multiple ways to migrate assets. One is importing Excel. You might have already seen in the Content Hub course. We define some some metadata and some public links. Then we can import through Excel. Then UI upload from the Content Hub server itself. You can just go to the certain create page and just upload the assets manually. And through code, yeah, using REST API or Web Client SDK, we can do all these CRUD operations, which is a create operation here. And let's explore a little more further, like Excel import. So each asset will have a lot of metadata based on our business use cases, but there are some predefined system metadata as well, which is a very mandatory if you are uploading through Content Hub. So those are here like identifier. Only one difference between ID and identifier. ID and both uniquely identifies an entity, but just that ID is auto-generated inside the Content Hub system. Identifier is we specify manually. So this is a user-defined identifier. So using which we can make a calls later and get the entities. So because we don't know the entity ID, but we know identifiers. So and title is mandatory for the asset, and asset type to asset, there are like a couple of taxonomy values. So product asset, brand assets. Final life cycle, okay, we are uploading that asset into the Content Hub, but what should be the asset final state? Same like in our site code, we have like a workflow. It should be in a drafted, it should be in approved state. So we can, if you are like very good with this file, we can just put it in approved state, or it can be created. Created means it should go to the approval process. And content repository to asset. Content repository, we have different repositories inside the Content Hub, which are like we spoke, content marketing platform, PCM, product content marketing, product content management. So all these things, all these components are there. If you are making content repository as a standard, that means we are uploading this asset to the DAM part of the system. So standard means here digital asset management. Next is a file, which is a public link, public URL. So this should be publicly accessible URL. So how does this asset migration happens inside once it uploads? So this again from the Content Hub training. So you do upload the asset. So based on all this top row, it would consider as, first row, it considers the column headers, and then it just imports all the below assets. It just creates empty assets. So all these metadata would be imported and create the assets first. Then second fetch job, it creates for each file. So each file it goes and brings those file and do the processing. So that's why sometimes you upload the assets, you would have empty assets first, like without any file, but all the metadata, then it would start populating one by one. So that's how the process happens. Why I'm mentioning here, we need to do if we are uploading assets through Web Client SDK, that means a code, we need to do the same activity. We need to create the assets first, then create a fetch job for that. I guess I'm taking a lot of time. Let me quickly go. So UI upload, pretty straightforward. You select a file. If the file is in the system, you can just upload. Or if you have a public URL, you can just import those links as well. But again, this will go to the created only. So where you can populate the metadata and then you can go to the upload. So, but as you know that this would be very tedious if you are doing a huge number, very huge migration, thousands of assets. Asset migration, which is most preferred way if you are migrating it, huge number of assets, which is through code. You can do either using API or Client SDK, just a simple code base. You define all those mandatory fields, which are title, content repository, final life cycle, asset type, and you save the asset. Then you create a fetch job associated with this created asset. So that's how we do it. I'll show you in a code. And last, okay, we did all the migration for the lower environment. Now let's move on to higher environment. Okay, how do we do it? I did all these things in QA. How do I go? So we can export everything. You see right side, like all the entity definitions, profiles, media processing, option list. All these things are like user defined. We create in the system. So all these things can be exported. Only catch here is we cannot export assets using this import export profile. So this will create some JSON files, and you can go to the new environment and just choose file and override, import that to the new environment. So those entity definitions. So you don't need to create these new entities, properties, relations again and again in different environments. You can create in one environment. You can use this import export. For assets, we can create download all the assets and put it into higher environment. But it's not much useful because the metadata processing and everything happens again in the new environment. Very important piece to remember, if you are exporting entity definitions, it will override already existing definitions in the new environment, which wherever you are importing it. There is no merge option how we have in the Sitecore item packages. So it would override if you are doing entity definitions, nothing else. Just if entity definition purely, it will override. If at all, that's the reason we don't directly go and make change in a higher environment. Or else if you are doing it manually in all the environment, that's fine. But if you are not doing it manually, make sure that in a lower environment, you have same set of entity definition as your production. Okay, that is pretty mouthful. Just let me, okay, this is an interesting piece. Okay, we have seen enough talking. Let's see some real use cases, what we have come across. Where do you use action scripts? Where do you use external page components? Where do you use some integrations? So first is external page components. We did have a requirement like each asset would be downloaded a number of times. We have a overall assets, how many times downloaded and those kind of overall reports, but we do not have any way to show on each individual asset detail page. So for this, we had to write a custom external page components. Even though we're not sending any query outside, we are querying internally only, but using an external page component, we could fulfill this requirement. Pre-built components will not suffice this requirement. And next is action scripts, like a number of ways we do use it. So imagine we had a requirement like we did integrate with the SSO, so single sign-on for the customers. So, but the first time when the user comes into the system, we do need to do some activities for them. So that time we did using post registration that action scripts, and we hit some C# code and do some activity. And next is pretty common, update a property value. So you have multiple properties there. Based on one property value change, we need to calculate or process something and update another property value. So something like that. And update another entity property value based on the relation update. So we have we have two entities in place. Anytime any relation is changed between them, like one-to-many or many-to-many, or relation is removed or relation newly added, that time we have another property on another entity which we need to update. Just imagine like a count. This relation count we need to update. So that time we have used action scripts. So it just fires when relation is updated. So same like some property values are there, which when we migrated into a lot of assets we migrated into the system. So a lot of property values are there. We are processing those property values. That particular metadata has some information there. So we need to process that information, and based on that, we need to make relation between multiple entities. So whether this metadata matches there or not. So something like that. Although I cannot show you these real scenarios, but just I'm giving a hints on what could be accomplished using these action scripts. External integration, WebClient SDK. We were having a scheduled job feeding the data from external system into Content Hub, because that content is managed from some other system inside the inside the client ecosystem. So, but that information is required in the Content Hub, and that use case is that information is only need to be read only in the Content Hub. We don't need to be editable. That single source of truth is still the client other system. So that time we had to make a scheduled job and feed data from that external system periodically into the Content Hub. We did use Logic Apps as well as Azure Functions to achieve this. So Logic App for the orchestration, like when to hit this and how to fetch and all. But processing and feeding into the Content Hub, we used Azure Functions, and across we used a WebClient SDK to implement this. Let's move on to a little bit demo. Also, a few more things here. Migration, we have a lot of systems, external migrations. We did use quite a bit of code to migrate, or we used some pieces for the Excel migration. But that was a huge piece we implemented. And we used very extensively WebClient SDK to do a lot of cleanup activities, because we imported almost like 1 million assets. we need to do, so, and this is from different systems. So different systems might be, some assets might be common, maybe some metadata would be different, maybe metadata is common and some images are different. A lot of these things are there. So we had to do a lot of individual scripts, external scripts to do cleanups. So for this, we used extensively WebClient SDK. And yeah, that's pretty much theory. Let's see like a little bit of CH environment, although I won't show you everything, just will show you just very important pieces. I'm not going to create new entities, taxonomy, option list. Please go through Content Hub course. They have very well explained everything. So I'm just focusing on the what might not be covered in the course. So let's go back to the, just a sec. Yeah, just let me pull this here. Yep, I have this sandbox thanks to AKQA. I mean, the company have one sandbox which is on latest version now. So I've already logged in. Let me show you two important pieces mainly. So how do we know, okay, I logged into, I'm on the particular Content Hub. How do I know which version it is? We know inside we have that license terms and we can go there and which version we can see. Similarly, we have like API status, API/status, this all these REST API calls. So in this, we would have that file product version. This sandbox is on 4.0.0. So before plus sign, all these things is Content Hub version. And next is, how would I know whether it is a professional, corporate, or enterprise? Even though it is a sandbox, you would have this state of license. Remember, for this, you don't need to log in there to hit API status, but further, if you want to traverse anything, you need to be logged in. And so I've already logged in. So let me go to license. So, this is anyway, tenant is mock, all these things, license to Stylabs or whatever it is, because this is a sandbox. But observe this edition. This is enterprise edition. So this sandbox is enterprise edition. And while creating the sandbox, we did enable free modeling and content publishing. So kind of options we can enable while creating the sandbox. Let me go back to the system. Yeah. Sorry. So we'll just browse. Everything is customizable. So themes and all, everything, even the logo, all these things and collections. So even this background image and even these names. So, but let's just go to, I'm just focusing on assets. Here, this piece is PCM as a PCM component. And this is a content marketing platform. And this project is MRM, all these schedules, everything. So, but let's focusing on assets, create and review. So assets, let's go to assets. These are already predefined page. We would customize whichever way we want. So, okay, let's go to, let it load. I'm on mobile data, remember, so take maybe a while to load. But otherwise you have a lot of filters here. So brands, asset types, product category, product family, asset media. So a lot of facets here. Again, if you want particular taxonomy to be facetable, you can configure it on the page configuration. If you don't want to show this, then you can hide it, and some advanced. So if you're searching here, it's a kind of a, remember in Sitecore, we have a global field called, global virtual field called content in the search, which aggregates all the information on the template and searches. Or in the Sitecore, we can also search on the individual fields, specify the individual field in the content search and do the search as well. Similarly, if you are searching here, it aggregates all the, it searches all the fields, which are all marked as searchable. But here, if you want to search only title, you can search, and file name, description. Again, everything of this is customizable. So has duplicate and everything. So let me, saved is like if you save some of your custom search, maybe you are only focused on brand of assets and based on that JPEG images, then you can save that. Every time you can come, you can execute that save search. So, but let me go to here and open this. So I'm going to asset detail page. Observe here, this is the entity ID, which is auto generates while you upload the entity or while you create the entity. So in the meantime, let me open that API as well. We would see this all in the API as well. API, yeah, API/entities, and you can put the ID. So let it load. It loads the API. Whatever you're seeing the UI pretty information, you can see in the REST API as well. As a developer, we would be most of the time we would be working on this, so we know where and how the mapping happens, and based on that we can code in Web Client SDK as well as if you are working with REST API. So how to pass the JSON and everything, and yeah. So here you have an image and you have a couple of renditions. Mainly observe here. I'm not doing I'm not doing the normal walkthrough for you. I'm just doing like what are the important pieces for the developers. So system properties. As I said, like each entity is uniquely identified by two properties, which are ID and identifier. So ID is what you're seeing 29502 is this. But whereas identifier, which is auto-generated. So sorry, which is user defined, whatever you are defining it. If you are uploading, it will auto-generate also. And again, like how we have in Sitecore, created by, created date, modified by, and modified date. So these are some of the system fields we use when you are using cleanups or some of the activities. And file properties, based on which file it is. It is a JPEG. That's why you have all these files. Sometimes some few images will not process properly based on various reasons. The troubleshooting happens, this would be empty. So even though image is processed, so that time these file properties helped a lot while troubleshooting the issues. And you have file size and image analysis. This is a Vision API, which is already configured for the branding assets. For the asset type, we can configure which asset type it need to trigger. So if your asset upload the asset and you mark that as a branding asset, the Vision API triggers. Vision API, go to Azure Vision API and send this message, send this image and process it. Based on that, it will give us the tags and description and colors. And also this can be configurable, like what information you need from the Vision API. And if at all you are going to use some other external, maybe not Azure, something else, we need to customize it. So I observed for a lot of images, it gives pretty good information. And later, like 3.4 or 3.4.6 or somewhere, they introduced a video API as well, video Vision API kind of. So even if you upload video, it will give you all these image tags. It won't be like this, but it will give much more information about the video and transcript, all various things. And we can configure, okay, we don't need a description and colors, we only need the tags. We can configure that as well. We can omit this. So when it is sending the request to Microsoft, that Azure API, it will not ask for all description and colors. It will only ask for the tags. So that is the information. And let's see, not covering everything, just again, single line, you will have multi-line, you would have rich text, but taxonomy, option list. Option list is like you can have like a drop down list. You can enable this for the uniquely selected. I mean, you can only select one, or you can select multiple as well. That can be configured. And asset type, again, this can be configured like uniquely selectable, or it can be multi-select as well. Once you define unique or multi-select in the system for a particular option list or taxonomy, you cannot change it. If you have to change it, you have to delete and recreate it. This is our major pain point. We had to do a lot of back and forth. Sometimes the business wanted, like initially they needed that to be marked as unique, but sometime later, no, we need a option to select multi values as well. So it's a little bit tricky to change if you have done huge migration already. So remember that pieces when you are defining or you are confirming the entity models. So now this is a uniquely selected, but I mean, I'm not able to select because already one value is selected. But taxonomy, how different it is, mainly you would have a hierarchical, I mean, huge information, then you can do it using this taxonomy. And very important is optionless. We cannot do security. We cannot assign the security granular level, but whereas with the taxonomy, we can assign the securities as well. Okay, let's, I hope I have 5 or 10 more minutes. Just I will show you, I'm not going to show you action scripts and all. Let me just give you a little bit flavor of web client SDK. Before that, let's see like what all the information you're seeing here, you would see it here. So ID, and I already have one JSON Chrome extension, that's why it's showing here. So you would have properties, you would have relations. So, and again, system fields created, modified by entity definition. As I said, like this is a kind of a template. This, whatever you're seeing is an item, and this is a template. So this item, this entity is of m.asset. So m.asset is the entity definition. Then you have all these permissions, root taxonomy, related paths. So all these vision colors, a lot of these things, and all the renditions which are available. Why I'm telling is when we are working with web client SDK or when you are implementing some functionality in the code, we do come to this interface a lot. So we'll see, okay, what is the name? Okay, let me go to particular property. Okay, what is this property name? This property name is file name. So that is a uniquely identifier. Like I need to pass this property name, and I need to pass this description, and I need to pass some other file properties. So I need to navigate in between. So like that, a lot of these things we do. And relations, just a sec. Let me go up and collapse this. Expand the relations. Asset type to asset. Yeah, asset type is branding asset. So which we have seen this taxonomy here. Asset type is a branding asset, but this is a relation. So you would not, internally it will not save exactly name. It will have a reference to that as a, it will have a name. It will have a actual reference to that taxonomy value. If I go to 29475, you would see that this is identifier m.asset type branding asset, and that is the actual information of that. So like that, we keep navigating and try to understand. And also we can see, is it a parent, one-to-many relation or what? And it's all parents. So if you have a child, you would have a child as well. So this is master file is children. So whereas master file relation is a child of asset, but whereas asset type is a parent of asset. So these relations matters when we are fetching, when we are working with web client SDK. And yeah, m.asset, you would see all the member groups. Member groups will contain both properties and relations. So each property, you would know what is the type, what is whether it is single line, and whether it is a unique or not, whether it is unique, false. So let me just go to the taxonomy, or sorry, asset type. Yeah, asset type here. I was telling here, you would have allow navigation is step, system bound is conditional. You would somewhere have here taxonomy is path relation is rendition, allow, or let's see the child at least source. Okay, just let me see this. Yep, here you see the source is unique false, is multi-value false. It need not be unique between two assets, but it need not be multi-valued as well. It only like single value can select. So like this, we can navigate. This REST API is very, very useful. We work with it a lot. Let me switch to I will take 5 or 10 more minutes. Let me bring back my solution. I did create one console application. Let me just show you what I'm doing with. If you had watched my YouTube video, I'll come back to the questions a little later. Just let me finish this. I need to open the chat window. Yeah, so I don't know if you had watched my YouTube videos. I was recording all those CRUD operations. There I was doing the same solution, but I restructured a lot for this demo. I mean, a little bit made it better. So mainly what we need to do first, if you want to, I'm creating a console application. I've created a console application. Let me go to program and I'm doing a lot of read operations, delete, update, create. Let me see about create operation first. Now I'll show you a code in a moment. I'm just trying to show you how we can do all these operations here. It need to connect to the sandbox. Okay, it opened me in other system. Okay, let it load. Yeah, so I just defined like a lot of options here, like fetch assets. Read operations will be different ways we can do. So you would fetch, you pass an entity ID, you get the entity information, and you pass an entity definition. I mean, this is like getting the template. Sorry, getting the items, items based on the template. And fetch assets by title. I mean, I'm passing some title property value, then fetch assets. And relation, okay, I'm passing a branding assets as the asset type. Fetch all the assets which are mapped to branding assets. And fetch entity by this iterator and scroller. Maybe I will share the links. You can watch my YouTube videos. I better explain in detail. But these two we use for the huge number of assets pulling it, or entities. Fetch duplicate assets, which is one of a cleanup activity which we have done in the real-time scenario. I've explained how we can use all these functionalities, and these are pretty much common. Delete, update, create. Let's create first 11. That name create asset by entity ID, but I'm not passing any information. I hard coded all the information. So let it create an entity. We should get an entity ID. We are passing all the mandatory information: title, asset type, final life cycle, and content repository, as well as the public URL. So I'm sending some public URL, some Unsplash video. So 33922. So let me go here. So I can go to here, 33922. I am passing this entity ID. I've already marked it as a approved. I marked it as an approved asset. So there is no need to approve that. So let's see whether it created. So you notice here, this is what I was telling. First, it will create an empty asset. So empty asset got created, and it applied all these file name, sample, and asset type. Metadata information it already applied. It is processing now that image, the uploaded image. Once it is processed, you would get the image, all the renditions, as well as that file information, which you were seeing before, but for this it is not there. So there are scenarios sometimes this succeeds, but whereas the fetch job for that image fails. So then you would be left out with a lot of empty assets like this, and we do need to clean up. We do need to do a lot of cleanup activities for this. Now I haven't set the identifier, so this auto generated the identifier. Or if we can set it manually, we can set it manually as well, but it should be unique enough. So let me just reload it once again, whether it finished uploading. Okay. Yeah. So now it uploaded. So it uploaded the image as well. I mean, it processed the image as well. You see, we got the file properties. You got the image, and all the renditions are available for us to download. I mean, these are like predefined renditions. We can define our custom renditions as well. And this branding asset is tagged to Vision API. So there is an image analysis already run and came with the tags and colors. So description is disabled. Description is disabled, I guess, or it didn't get any description for this. So you see indoor, laptop, computer, and plant. It gives pretty much accurate, not 100%, but it gives. So white and gray. So it can find these colors. So like this, you would get a lot of information, and you got all these file properties. Let me go ahead and update this a little bit. So 33922. So I'm going ahead with the update asset entity. So please input entity ID 33922. I'm updating the title and relation. So relation, I guess it was same. Again, I'm just hard coding in the backend. I will just show you in a moment. So update of the entity is successful. If you notice, title would be changed. It would be update from SDK. Yeah, update from the SDK. I mean, I have only updated that piece, but we can update. I just wanted to show we can update all the information through that. Just last but not least, let me delete this. Okay, 33922. I can create again, but just let me show the delete as well. So H 33922. So deleting is much easier. So let me just come here and delete. Or just check. It should show as a 404. Yeah, that asset got deleted. So that's how like basic basic create, update, delete. Just show you one read operation. Then I can just show you code. Read operation. Let's go with fetch entities by entity definition. So second option, I'm going to pass the template name here, which is the entity definition name, which is m.asset. So let it run and give us the results. So I'm only outputting like top 10 results. So notice here, it fetched, I mean, total entities are 175. And, but in this call, it fetched 150. But how many it skipped? It didn't skip anything. Like it's kind of a pagination. It didn't skip any initial results, but I'm just only showing top 10 results. So top 10 files are this. Order by predefined order. We can sort by based on whatever we require. Let me close this. I'll just show you just a little quickly, nothing here. Mainly we need a connector. So we connect through OAuth client. We do create a OAuth client ID, client secret, and username. So username and password. So client ID and client secret will connect to the Content server, and username and password. So username and password is for which user we are trying to use this APIs. And we do create like a API user for this, and based on whatever that API user has access, those operations we can be able to do. We will be able to do. If that user will not have any create operations, we will not be able to create with this OAuth client. So keep in mind, you might get some errors, or you might not get any read information. Then go ahead and check this username. This particular user which we are using has all the access. So that's the only thing. Otherwise, you just need these 4 values and host. Host is the Content Hub URL. Not showing you that app settings because all my confidential information is there to connect that Content Hub server. But otherwise, pretty much here, and you would have app settings. So you have m.host, mclient, msecret, all these things are there, which are coming from app settings. Let me just go ahead and show you read entity. So I'm just showing you, I'm going to show one, which is, I said, by entity definition name. So you see here, pretty easy queries. So you write a query, I mean, you create a query using LINQ, which is querying it on the entities. A definition name we are passing, which is m.asset. Content repository to asset is I only want all the assets which are marked as a standard. So which I said like which is our DAM, I mean DAM part of the system. So then you execute this query, and this default is what all the properties and relations you want to load. So this we can define, but I'm just taking the default. Default will load all the properties, but no relations. So you execute, but also I'm making query take is 150, take 150 records for one call, or by default is 50 calls. So this is much easier, right? I mean, you can just get the calls. Let me just show you update and delete. Sorry, update entity. Again, you fetch an entity, pass an entity for update, then set the property value. So update this property value title to something, and as well as if it is a branding asset, you get the asset type branding actual ID based on the identifier and then update the relation. So relation parent, I'm passing it to some other ID. So you would see a lot of async operations here because Webclient SDK is full of async operations. So you need to know a little bit of, if you're not worked on, just refresh your, or you have worked on enough, just refresh your async await and task in C#. So you'd be otherwise a little confusing. Everything is task, async and await. So awaiting results. And let me just go you and show delete. Delete is not very simple. You pass an entity ID, you delete it. And create just a little bit more. I'll wrap up with this. Not much here, just a mandatory fields we need to send. Title and content repository to asset, which you have seen in the Excel slide. Final life cycle, asset type to asset. These 4 we have to send, and last is the public URL. So once we send this 4, first we need to create the empty asset. So this is what save async. So this saves the empty asset and it gives you the asset ID. Now next is we need to create a fetch job. Fetch job, for that I need a public URL. I'm just so this is an image. Also you need, I just open this image in new tab and Splash. So this URL we need to give actual downloadable. You cannot give this URL, then it will not know how to process it. It will need to be no download URL. So I given this same image only here, and file equal to not create fetch job. Fetch job creating is easy. You just need to pass the file. You just need to you need to pass the asset ID for which asset we are mapping this file. So resource and create fetch job async. So it might take a while to run this, but this would be complete pretty much quickly. So that's all the information I had. Let me go back to the slide and just put a slide then. Because I'm not sure I have taken a lot of time, but yeah, content training. There are 2 things you need. I mean, as it is a sandbox, as it is a SaaS model, you need a sandbox to work, to do all the demos or to do all the practice. Unfortunately, it is paid. So like sandboxes are like, I'm not sure exact number, but something around $300, $350 per month. So, but as I have like my partner sandbox, I'm using that to learn. If you are working for a partner or client who are going to use the Content Hub, then you can ask your company to create a sandbox, then you can learn. If not, I'm not sure whether it is individually we can create the sandbox or not. But training is free. Recently only Content Hub 4 is launched. So previously it was only, I mean, it was 3. So what they did is once they launched the 4 Content Hub 4 training, they made Content Hub 3 as free, 3 training. So this training is available on learningsitecode.com and it is free only until August 31st. This has a coverage of Content Hub user for a couple of hours and Content Hub admin activities and Content Hub developer like a few more hours. So they explain all these Webclient SDK, all the taxonomy. They start from the basic. It's very good training, I guess. Please go and watch. Previously, when we started, like last year, it was all these things were in Showpad. So that was only for the partner portal, but later they moved into learningsitecode.com. And certification, I heard that they are going to introduce certification for the individual developers and admins pretty soon. But when we wrote it, that was only for the, like, even though we write the mock assessment, everything, partner company will get the kind of a certification like specialized partner. So to get the specialized partner, you need 2 admin level certifications and 1 developer certification. But if you do, that is not individually identifiable. That is like, it will go to the company. But I heard that they are going to introduce pretty soon the new certification for admins and developers. So if I come to know, then I will share you guys. Let me go back to Sorry, let me go back to chat. I guess I saw a lot of questions there.
Yes, Gopi. So you don't need to go to chat session. I'll just narrate some because some questions are privately shared with me. Some are for
Okay, sure.
everyone.
So again, I can give you best of my knowledge. I'm still exploring a lot on this platform. So please bear
Yes,
with me.
yes, and there are many questions, so I might not
Oh,
be able to take all because it's almost plus 15 questions. So I'll
oh,
take few which are very important for the session, and I can share the questions with you, and we can
yeah,
get back to
sure.
everyone in WhatsApp group or something with the answers.
Yeah, sure,
Okay.
definitely.
So the first question comes in is any external module can be installed in Content Hub similar to Sitecore, is it?
Uh, no, you cannot go and just install some module in Content Hub. You would create like some external, what do you call, if you want to integrate something, you would just create through external entity, but whatever the connectors are available, like be it a Sitecore XP connector, be it a CMP connector, I guess both are merged now, be it a Adobe Cloud connector, that all runs separately. Nothing will sit in Content Hub.
Okay. Thank you. The next question is, this is from my side. It's not for Amazon voucher. It was just a normal question. Can we execute PowerShell scripts in the internal scripts? As you said, the internal scripts can be C#, right? So,
No, sorry, right now it only supports C#.
okay.
Yeah.
The
They
next
do have
question
a, sorry, they do have a CLI platform, some command line interface. I was digging much information on that, but couldn't get much. Next phase, I want to dig that CLI. They have some CLI. I'm not sure for what all operations we can perform on that, but definitely internally there is no PowerShell, only C#.
Okay, noted. Next is, what is the search mechanism does the Content Hub support?
Okay. Again, we cannot hook in our own our own any search engines. It uses Elasticsearch. I hope everyone knows. It's another search engine similar like Solar, Solar Azure Search or Covio. So Elasticsearch. So Content Hub heavily relies on the Elasticsearch. Whatever you're seeing in the set search page, all those search and internal everything is based on the Elasticsearch.
Next is, as per Content Hub training, is there separate experience age and Content Hub installations? Any info on what difference are there between Content Hub and experience age?
Okay. I specifically not covered this experience at PAT, but because I guess Akshay already covered in Pune or Bangalore. I'm not sure which user group he has covered, but let me brief about it. Whatever you've seen, this environment, this is enterprise, already already experience edge also enabled. What happens is, till now we are using Webclient SDK or STAPA to integrate, right? But what if this whole content, we want to deliver it to some other system? Like continuously they want to query our Content Hub and they want to show in their system, like how JSS or some other, just imagine a Sitecore, right? Sitecore, we have a content there. In Sitecore content, we want using maybe Sitecore services client or some other services, API endpoints, we will try to open it for the delivery platform. Similarly, Experience Set sits on top of Content Hub. It opens up all these PCM, content marketing platform related content types, as well as these assets using the GraphQL. So you can access all of these using GraphQL. Please watch Akshay's session. He explained much better, like in detail, how you can create Experience Edge, because you need to create some API keys, and then you can go to GraphQL, and using GraphQL, you can query all these things. Whatever I've shown you using console app, you can perform all these things in the GraphQL as well. But that is mainly for the not integration, mainly for the delivery platform. You would have your own presentation. So with using this.
Okay. So the next question is, do we have any limitation with using either the web client SDK or scripting framework when going with the Experience Age solution?
Two are different things here. Scripting framework and web client SDK are little different. What we are talking about, Experience Edge is different. Experience Edge is, as I said, like GraphQL based. Web client mainly finely tuned for the delivery platform. I mean, for delivery and show it in a different systems. but WebClient SDK and scriptings used in, again, different scenarios. WebClient SDK is used for the external integrations, like feed data into the Content Hub or data out of the Content Hub. A scripting framework is just a small piece of C# code which we run on the Content Hub server itself. So based on some, maybe just a simple example is based on some button click event, we want to run some C# code, whatever the activity it does. So that's a scripting. So three are little different. WebClient SDK and scripting can be interchangeably used, but again, limitations wise, scripting has limitations because it executes on the server itself. So you cannot do external, you cannot call external, you can call external before, I guess they made it restricted now, and you cannot have a NuGet packages because it's a C# code. If you are using some different libraries, you need a NuGet package for that to execute. But scripting only provides some of the predefined NuGet packages, and also they have some filtered NuGet packages which you should not be using it. So a lot of these things, and scripting framework I observed, like when I started in 3.3, for now it changed a lot. They made it more restricted and they have stopped those external calls as well because they don't want to put a load on the Content Hub server. This is the one important point. Whatever, even you can run heavy operations, but it will take a load on the server. So because it is executing on the server itself. Yeah.
Yes. The next question is, do we have a feature similar to Recycle Bin to recover any deleted assets?
That's a good question. Yeah, I should have explained that. Yeah, we have a feature called trash. So rather than deleting it directly, we can select a couple of assets and we can mark it as a trash. Again, similar like Recycle Bin, that this trash will go to we have a separate trash bin and going there we can, and it is settings, based on the settings, I guess it can clean up, like by default it is 30 days it keeps. So after 30 days, it cleans up automatically. Or, I mean, same like Recycle Bin, you can restore as well. So, and just to add extra point, there is a concept in Sitecore and there is a concept in Content Hub called archiving as well. What this archiving is, infrequently used assets, maybe it is very old assets, but still we want to keep it. We don't want to delete it. So in Azure Blobs, because all of these things store in Azure Blob Storage. In Azure Blob Storage, we have a concept called cold tier and hot tier. This is implemented in Content Hub as well. So which are actively frequently used assets will sit in hot tier, which you are seeing on the assets search page. But if you don't want these to be, I mean, you know that these are not going to frequently used, but you want to archive it. So you can mark them archive, and these archived will sit in cold tier. So you can see all these things in the stats page as well. So how much it consumed cold storage, how much it consumed hot storage. So even again, if you want sometime in future, if you want this archival asset to mark as a active asset, then you can go and mark them. So only thing is all these renditions, which are custom renditions, this all gets deleted. So it frees up a lot of memory. So that's the reason. So three concepts: delete, directly deletes; trash, it goes to Recycle Bin; archive, it stores in the cold storage.
Okay. Thank you. That was too knowledgeable. Yeah. So the next question is how we can create multiple variations of the same image in a different sizes, which is suitable for different devices. Also, can authors set a defined focal point on the images?
I haven't worked on a focal point exactly, but asset different sizes, yeah, because you notice that we keep talking about the renditions, right? Just a sec. Let me go here. Sorry, I'll not show in detail, but just let me open here. Oh, come on. So here. Yeah. So if you go to asset, I mean, what do we mean by when we are uploading? So when we are uploading an asset, there are like custom renditions run. I mean, there are predefined renditions run, as well as we can define our custom renditions. We can do like sizes, different sizes, social media platforms, all these things are available. So you see here, original is actual file, alternative metadata. You can extract these file properties metadata, as well as PDF size and preview. and you can also go for the custom download. So here you see JPEG, PNG, even change, don't resize, custom width and height. You can change it like, although it's dumb, but you can change it. So all this way, and what all the names you can give, and you can download it. So while downloading, you can fine tune whichever it is. Focal point, I didn't work on that much. I recently saw that Robert, I guess, from the Netherlands, if I'm not wrong, he did a external integration for focal point. He did use that external page component and did all these some customizations. So maybe I'll share that link, but focal points I haven't worked on much. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. The next question is, how can we integrate Content Hub with Sitecore Experience platform?
Again, purposefully I omitted this for now because there are a ton of videos and articles on that, on blog posts on that. So you just install a package in Sitecore, whatever the XP or XM environment, and then you are then whenever you are trying to select an image, it will open the Content Hub environment where you can select the images and add it. So that's how it would be done. And there are two connectors available, if I'm not wrong. Previously, it was CMP connector is different and actual Content Hub DAM connector is different. Now they integrated both, and now that is one connector, if I'm not wrong. I didn't play it much, but it is pretty easy to start forward. Again, Akshay made a couple of videos on this. Yeah, you can please watch.
Yes, thank you. So I think the next question you have already answered, but I'm not sure if it is the same one. How can we convert and load image PNG JPEGs as WebP image from Content Hub to get optimized performance on client browser?
Okay, WebP. So all these things, there is a concept called media processing. Just let me quickly show you. I mean, these renditions only, whatever we can define these renditions, we can customize this rendition. We can convert these, like if you are uploading an image, you want to convert into certain things, you want to let me go. So I'm going to manage section and media processing. Content. So you see here, images, all these image formats it supports now. When you upload this, all these image formats, it does run behind the scenes this processing engine, this processing flow. So this is a customizable, I mean extensible. You can add, you can customize whatever way you want. So let it load. If an image gets added, you observe here, I have not added any custom rendition, but otherwise, if this is a predefined ones. As soon as you add an image, it converts into PDF. It extracts the metadata. It converts into preview, and again it converts it big thumbnail crop, and thumbnail, because it is internally using all these things to show on different detail pages and preview download. So all these things, if you need to convert to WebP format, all you need to do is you can come and add it here, process, and you can add this extra rendition, then it converts. So that would be available when you are downloading it. So all these options would be available for the download. Yeah. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Gopi. So next, I think is again, it is a SaaS, but we cannot do it, but I'll ask the question. So can we configure an error page like we do in Sitecore for handling the exceptions?
Exceptions, not exactly sure. I don't remember doing it exception pages, but these pages can be configured. Some of this content can be configured, if I remember correctly. 404, all these text, all these things can be customized, can be modifiable. And remember, when you are getting an exception in that's a beauty, right? When you want exception, you may not be able to show it, but if in the Content Hub, if anytime something is happening, if you are getting an exception, you would get a notification down here, right side down. So saying maybe search engine failed or something else, that kind of exception happens. It won't throw like a whole error page here. like 404 page. 404 page is obviously different because this entity itself is not present. But if any error is happening, you would get a notification here saying maybe this search has failed, maybe this entity is not proper, or maybe required fields are missing. So like that. So that's the way we do it. So exception page, I don't think so there is an exception page in this. Obviously, they don't want to send users to some exception pages as a SaaS platform.
Yeah. Thank you. The next question is a good one. Let's see how it works. How are the empty assets handled? Content Hub automatically does any cleanup, or users should run any scripts to handle them?
Yeah, good question. I face this a lot because, as I said, like we almost imported a million assets. We did have a lot of these URLs failed. I mean, some of them are URLs failed. So I had to write a custom script using whatever the CRUD operation knowledge we have. CRUD operations. Okay. In a bottom line is, I haven't found anything out of the box from the Content Hub which will do this cleanup. We have to do our own cleanup. So for that, you can write a console app, or you can write some other function which can write it. Good thing is, how do we know that particular asset is not having any image associated with it? So this is what master file. So if this master file is empty, then that means that there is no file associated with it. Then you can go and do what are the cleanup we need, or you can import the once again. So that's what I have done. I have done a lot. So these cleanups.
Thank you. So last question. I don't think we have time, but I'll just take that question up, and maybe you can want to answer a brief about it. Then you can. Hey Gopi, can you explain in brief any project you might have worked on Content Hub?
I hope I explained that only, but just let me. Can't tell the client names. I can't tell anything, but just on a higher level, I did work on. I mean, obviously, this information or this understanding I may not be able to get through just learning and working on the sandbox. I did work on a real-time project like last year, second quarter, third and fourth quarters. And a lot of work went to that. Just a brief about that. That's a corporate edition I worked on, and it's around 3.4 version. And we did, if you remember the use cases I had shown, those are the use cases from that real implementation only, where we integrated from one of the client feed using Azure Logic App and Azure Function. It feeds to the it gets the information from the client system and feeds into the Content Hub. We did create a lot of customizations, custom scripts, and we did create a lot of the cleanup scripts. We did a lot of work on the migrations. So all these things, huge challenges while migration. Remember that you need to have these URLs publicly available. That was a huge challenge for us because obviously no client will like them to make public, but you can put them to Azure Blob Storage and random URL which are not accessible. I mean, which are accessible identifiably, but nobody will be able to get that randomly generated URL. Project wise, unfortunately, I can't dwell into much details. So sorry about that. But that's a real use cases. I tried to give all that information, but other than that, sorry at this time.
Yes, we all can know that there are client restrictions. So yeah. I think Vinay and Arjun are the clear winners for the Q&A. So please share your, I think Arjun had shared his email. Vinay, can you please share your email ID? And hope it's your time to select 2 lucky winners from the participants. Now, I know that we had thought of using the numbers because most of them you know already. But the problem is you and my screen can be different. So you get the number out and I can say like the name, or you can take the number and then take the name.
Or, okay, yeah. I don't know. I mean, you take your side number only, 6 and 10.
6 and 10. So for me, the 6th is Diksha Srivastav and 10 is Mahindra Kumar Meena. So guys, Diksha and Mahindra Kumar Meena, please share your email IDs in the chat.
Yeah. Before leaving, just want to leave with this. If you are trying to explore further on I mean, in 1 hour, it is very difficult to cover a lot of these things. So what I was doing is I was uploading like from last 1 week continuously. All these things are on exclusively on WebClient SDK. So I was making a little detailed explanation about how we can do all the operations in WebClient SDK. So please, you can watch these videos. I'll share the link, or once video uploaded, I will share the link there. And also GitHub, I will upload that WebClient SDK project, so you can access. So a lot of things are in pipeline, so you would get a lot of videos per day. Thank you all for watching.
Thanks Gopi, and thanks everyone for joining us today. We have another event planned by the end of this month. I think we have extended our time 15 minutes more, so I don't want to waste your time more. And the winners will receive your Amazon vouchers in 3 working days. And do join us for the next sessions. And thank you everyone, and happy weekend. I think weekend is almost over. Tomorrow we are working. So have a good Sunday, I can say. Thanks everyone.
Thank you all. See you.
Thanks, Hope, and everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Gopi. Thanks, Rohan.
Bye.
This was a great session.